Do you have all the things they say should make you happy, but you still feel unfulfilled? Are you always doing what you should do? Or do you never feel like you're enough? And you want to feel better, more fulfilled, more aligned, and more comfortable in your own body? Then this is the show. Scared as fuck and doing it anyway, showing up authentically. My name is Paula Schuster, and I'm a self-love and authenticity coach. My life completely changed when I started loving myself again, putting myself first, and being true to me. This is the show that's going to help you get out of being stuck, out of the cycles of self-abandonment, and help you choose yourself without feeling selfish. It will give you not only inspiration, but awareness, courage, and insights to make changes and live your life for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, Showing Up Authentically podcast. I'm your host, Paula Schuster, and wow, have I got a treat for you today. I am interviewing an incredible, amazing, extraordinary woman who has gone through huge transformations in her life. Her name is Rebecca Gillis, and I was really interested in having this conversation with Rebecca because we have some similarities both in our deep pasts and also in our more recent pasts, with the journeys that we've been on to reconnect with our authentic selves. Her healing journey is really, really inspiring, at least for me. She's been through a lot, so much, and overcome so much in her life, so many limiting beliefs about herself, and the way that she's reflected on it all and the things that she's learned from it all give me so much perspective and help me think about my own transformation in a new and different way. And it gives me new ways to connect with myself and take care of myself. So I really appreciate that about this conversation. Anyone out there who has struggled with food and their weight and addiction will especially relate to this episode. But that's definitely not all that's in this conversation. There's so much more in here. And besides finding it interesting and relatable and eye-opening, there's so much you will gain from listening to Rebecca's story and thoughts. And I know you will resonate with what she shares. Her healing process, which has included connecting with the wisdom of her inner child, reconnecting with her intuition, building trust, forgiveness, and respect for and with herself, accepting and loving herself, and surrendering and letting go, has resulted in such amazing gifts in her life, like a loving relationship with a partner that she never believed she was worthy of, having better relationships with her family all the way around, exploring things beyond her career that interest her that she never thought she would do, and just being cracked open. And boy, is that an incredible, open-hearted feeling that really brings freedom if you've ever experienced it. So this conversation is jam-packed, and I just have so much love and respect for this woman and all she can teach us because of all that she's gone through. So without further ado, please welcome Rebecca Gillis. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Glad to have you on. Let's just start off. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name's Rebecca. Professionally, I'm a freelance copywriter. So I work in advertising. In terms of, I guess, my life and journey, I've been in recovery for, actually, I just 9 years sober as of yesterday. And that's from alcohol.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. This time of year, it's always a time to be really extra grateful, waking up happy and sober without any disasters, over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the last 9 years, I've been exploring many different therapies and modalities and methods, and encountered tons of different wonderful people. So for me, recovery isn't just around alcohol or drugs, or in my case, food, but just like overall, like kind of regaining or discovering my true self and gifts. And my life's really continuing to grow and open up. And that's something I also want to, the biggest part of it for me is sharing it with others.
Wonderful. Wow. So your journey to kind of coming back to your true self is even a little bit maybe longer than mine has been. I love that. So What kind of therapies and modalities, I'm curious, have you been exploring over this time?
Yeah, so I started, I mean, prior to sobriety, I was a psychiatrist, antidepressants, psychologists, all of that, counselors. But in recovery, I started in kind of spiritual group recovery. Um, and that's something I still do to this day. And then from there, once I got sober and really honest and humbled and open, I was able to then kind of return to therapy, like talk therapy,
Mm.
CBT, which was life changing. I had a wonderful therapist, and she and I worked together for probably 3.5 years. And that was wonderful. And then on top of that, I started doing EFT tapping, which I'm not no, sure if you're familiar with that. It's basically where you tap along meridian points, so eyebrow, side of eye, different points on the face and body, and you can do that either self-guided or a guided meditation, and it really connects you with emotions. Um, in my case, past experiences, traumas, like stuck things that are still there, and these subconscious blockers that I wasn't aware of. So using this EFT therapy, I started doing that. A mentor suggested it, and I found it was really helpful for a lot of things, except I was still struggling with food. Um, Food addiction is a big part of my story. And I spent 6 years in an abstinence-based program, so where you abstain from any foods or food behaviors that you find to be an issue. And that was great for a while, but it felt very restrictive and like there was something more. And so I discovered her name is Brittany Watkins, and she has a program called Thrive. And she basically found that while tapping worked on a lot of things, like it can work on depression or memories or just feeling overwhelmed or physical pain, anything. She didn't find it was working for emotional eating because she did tap for 20 plus years. So she developed her own program where it addresses specifically all of the blockers behind emotional eating. So self-sabotage, it could be sex trauma, emotional eating, memories connected to food. There's all sorts of different kind of parts to it.
Mhm.
And so, and in that, it's the opposite of restriction, where you're actually you bring all your binge foods into the house. You don't get rid of anything. You tap on all of these things, and it's very hard to describe in a short period, but it was amazing. And then from there, in that group, in that community, I discovered a mentor who is also an addictions counselor and therapist, has become a dear friend. And she helped me with I always think the last thing I did might have been the most important part of it, but it's hard to know which parts of all of these like they work together. But we really did really deep inner child work, which was part of Brittany Watkins' program. But we continue with inner child work, so kind of reconnecting with yourself,
Mhm.
um, and this part of you that maybe you've abandoned through, in my case, alcohol, drugs, but just workaholism. And there's a lot of guilt and anger and shame in there that I'd done a lot of work on over the years, but I got to a much deeper level there. And I'd say this connection with my inner child, which is all younger versions of myself from the age of 2 to even to my 30s. What developed there was a trust and forgiveness of self,
Mm.
um, both as as a parent to myself, but also I spent a lot of years abandoning and abusing myself, and that took a lot of time to reconnect and build that trust. It took years, and also having a connection with an inner child who has her own wisdom around how to play and take chances and enjoy things like going to a dog park or an amusement park. And she'll tell me when I go into abandonment, which we all do,
Yeah.
any denial, avoidance, self-harm, which I can still do with food. Um, it's like she's nudging me and saying, "Hey, hey, hey, we need to. we need to look at something together. And because I
Oh.
have a connection now with myself that I didn't have before, I can say, oh, sorry, what's going on? I need something, or I'm missing something, or I'm avoiding. Um, so yeah, and then in that I became my own self-parent rather than seeking parents through either my own parents, which I think you and I talked about, but I say my parents are my mother and father, but they're not my parents because I'm an adult. They're it's not their job to parent me. I still look to them once in a while for that, but that's when I'm reminded again where codependency is also a big part of has been some of my issues. And the more I depend on myself in a healthy way, the less I feel I need to depend on others to do what I'm responsible for, which is to take care of me. And I'm less interested in what people think or other people's preferences, opinions of what I need to be satisfactory,
Yeah.
um, that gets to be on my own terms and caring what other people think. That's changed others rather than be myself. If I figure out what I need to say or do to make you like me, you being anyone, I'll focus on that instead of what I need and what I want. And so, yeah. And then this is kind of a long answer, but, and in that, some of those gifts that have come of like a loving relationship with a partner that I really believed I would never find and wasn't worthy of, that it wasn't for me. I always sabotaged my relationships or chose the wrong ones, or I have a better relationship with my family, and I'm exploring things beyond my career that my career is not something I want to do forever. And I'm open now. I feel like that cracked open stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And through this food journey, I think I gained 70 pounds in abandoning this perfect size 6 body and eating restricted, with restriction to allowing something else in and just letting go, truly surrendering.
Mhm.
And now my body's going back to the way it was, and these things are happening when I kind of get out of the way, of trying to manage and control everything and allowing something else to guide that. And it's still a struggle, and that's okay. So
Yeah. Wow, there's just so much in all that you just said. I love it. Um, I can relate to so much there. The first thing I guess I'll say is it becomes easier, doesn't it? So once you have that connection with self again, all of
right.
the things become easier, don't they? Have you found that?
Yes, absolutely.
I
Yeah, there's
really
no,
have
yeah,
found I didn't have that connection for so many years. Yeah.
and everything's a struggle and a guess and a trial. And it's like, yeah, and I still go to that, but there is that, some would call it divine, inner self, higher self, whatever, higher power. But or intuition, gut, right? Like our gut, some people call it God, some people call it gut, whatever. Right? It's just something that I don't need to struggle to find it, and I can trust following it. And it's not an intellectual exercise. It's like it's going from the head to the heart.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like and that, or your stomach, where they say we have a bigger brain is in our stomach. And I still struggle. I still intellectualize most things, and sometimes I need to suffer. And that's why my podcast is called Hell, Happiness, Repeat, for
Mhm.
that reason of I need the suffering and the hell. The deeper I go into the hell and allow it rather than running from it, numbing out, avoiding it, trying to be perfect, those continual cycles through hell get me to a higher state of recovery or happiness in my simple language.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes I need to suffer to do that. And often it's suffering is in my own head. I got to overthink this. I've got to obsess. I've got to stay in the fear. I've got to control the situation, involve others, and I suffer. And then I let go. And that's going inward, where it's like, what is it I'm supposed to do today?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I go through that same kind of cycle. So have you found over time that cycle of going through that suffering and then kind of recognizing, acknowledging and getting over it, has that shortened?
Yes,
Like,
it's gone deeper and shortened. Like I'd say the last 2 years have been the hardest in recovery because I let go of my last. This particular struggle in hell was around body and weight and food. And because I've been in a program for so many years that A taught me, and it's not to knock any program, but it taught me that there's no way to overcome food addiction other than absolute abstinence from anything dangerous. So foods that you binge on, you got to get them out of the house and don't ever touch them again. And, eating second plates, eating in bed. And these are all kind of healthy behaviors. Like you don't eat in bed, you don't, all the things, behaviors that would lead to unhealthy eating habits and choices had to be eliminated. And when I did that, I got the size 6 body I'd never had and always wanted.
mhm.
I got some peace around food. I wasn't counting calories anymore. And I miss aspects of that, but that was easier. Even though it was hard, that was hell get trying to get abstinent. And I relapsed many times. But when something was guiding me at that time, I left that program when I was still abstinent. I was still thin. I wasn't relapsing. There was this voice saying for quite a while, forget living in boxes. There's something greater for you to experience and pursue. I don't know what it is. And you're going to need to gain weight to learn the next thing.
Yeah. I love that the inner voice, the whisper, your intuition, and that you have a connection with that and that you're listening, right? Because I mean, we all have that. And I just wasn't listening for years. I was sort of turned off to it.
Hmm.
And I love that you're listening. I'm listening, and my whole life is changing now because I'm listening to those intuitive whispers, and it makes all the difference in the world. Um,
Right.
it's funny, I was overweight my entire life. And it started when I was about, I don't know, I think I was 12 years old when my mom saw my weight on the scale, and my mom was always really overweight. And so she just didn't, I'm not saying this at all to place blame, but just to, sort of let people know where it came from. And she just didn't want the same thing for me. She wanted me to not be overweight. And so I think I was 12, and she was like, oh, she's like, you are 117 pounds. You cannot gain one more pound,
Mm,
And it was just like, whoa, okay. And so from that like point forward, like I hated my body for all my life
yep.
until I started healing and recovering and really sort of I recognizing that I didn't love myself again, and then sort of putting myself first. And I like how you said getting out of your own way. I stopped, worrying about that. And then all of a sudden I dropped like 70 pounds.
Wow.
It just became easy. Like I started doing intermittent fasting, which I thought was going to be super, super hard for me. And one day, um, I just woke up and I thought, at first I was going to go from 3 meals to 2 meals, and then spend some time there, and then go from two to one. And I thought it was going to be this long timeline. And I just woke up one day and I felt powerful enough to do it, and just strength from within. And I said, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to fast today and not eat until 3:30. And,
Right.
and then it was like, I, when I did that the first day, I was like, whoa, I felt so powerful. Like I finally, for the first day in my whole life, and this was, I mean, I was 50 or 51 years old, I think, 50. For the first day since probably when I was 12 or even before, like I felt like I had power over food instead of it having power over me. And like from that day forward, it wasn't easy every day, but that
Right.
particular day was easy enough for me to get on the wagon and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I still struggle, here and there. My weight goes up and down a little bit, but mostly it stays, sort of where I'm at now, which I think is just my body's comfort zone for where I'm at. So I'm not a size 6, I'm like maybe a 10 or 12, on the bottom, smaller on the top, but I kind of have big thighs and a butt. So, but,
Nothing wrong
and I
with
think
that.
I've just accepted it, like this is where my body feels most comfortable, and I'm good with it.
That's amazing. And that's the thing, that acceptance part. Like there's this book, and this part in this book that says, the acceptance is the key to all my problems today.
Mm-hmm.
Until I can accept every person, place, thing, and circumstance as exactly as it's meant to be today, I'll find no peace or serenity.
Wow.
And that plagued me because I used that reading a lot throughout the last 9 years. And when I was leaving that abstinence program, and I so relate to stuff you said about your body and your mom and your body and just not liking your body. And there was a woman in Brittany's program, one of the coaches, and she said she was 300 pounds. It took her 3 years to lose the weight because she had to get to a place of acceptance and love for herself
Mm.
first before the weight went. And that just terrified me because all I was thinking is I can't be 300 pounds like her. I can't, I can't become 300 pounds. And it took months to get to that place of accepting my body, loving my body, at a much like size that I would never, it was the biggest I'd ever been in recovery. Like I was in recovery and bigger than I'd ever been my whole life. And I got to a place of still feeling beautiful, still being able to go out and have sex and enjoy and be helpful to others and feel self-respect in a different size because I equated my body with so much of my worth. I had no idea that as long as I'm thin and a size 6, you can take me seriously. I can show up, I can date. And what a sad way to live. And if I had stayed a size 6, I would never have healed any of that
Right.
because I wouldn't know the difference. Like my body was my higher power. And again, I thought, and I'm gonna lose it. My body's still gonna age, it's still gonna change, but I gotta be a size 6. Yeah, that self-acceptance stuff. And when you said the power over food too, it's what I was hearing from what you were describing is that you also took power back over, like, you get to decide how you feel about your body, no one else. And I had the same thing with my mother, she was always thin. You and I had spoken about this before, but she's very nervous and she saw a young daughter gaining weight and she didn't want us eating crap all the time. So she had rules around, what foods we could eat and not eat. And it all makes sense as a mother, but I developed these ideas around body and food and weight that eating bad food is shameful. Being thin, you're more lovable and you get more attention and you're not a worry. And yeah, so thin became love for me. And I didn't know that because it was subconscious.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how our little mind, our little brains, they interpret things from our parents that, that they don't intend most of the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. And it ends up, staying with us and we carry it for so, so long. Were you ever bullied?
I was bullied and it was in grade 4. And that was huge. Food was my best friend during that time. And I also had a dysfunctional best friend relationship with a friend from the age of 3 to like our late 20s. And there was some bullying in there or just abandonment and punishment, dysfunction on both sides. But she also was my savior, but it was very conditional. And yeah, so I was bullied in grade 4. And I remember like I would go home, I would sneak home from school and go to the corner store or just cook like a pound of bacon and eat by myself because that's how I soothed myself and felt safe. And also had to do it before my mom got home because I didn't want anyone seeing me eat that way. And this friend of mine, she and I ate together. Later, we drugged and drank together as well, but we ate together. That was how we connected.
Yeah.
And it was so fun and soothing. So my food was my best friend. Sometimes it was my parent. I was alone a lot as a kid,
Mm.
just because it's due to circumstance. And so it was both my crutch, and my parent, but it was also a point of shame. And I liked eating in isolation, and I didn't want to hear you've had enough. You're going to gain more weight. I didn't want to hear that. So yeah, and when we're little, we internalize that and carry it through. We don't need our parents to do it after a while because we'll take over and do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. We are doing it ourselves from so long, from so early. We have a lot in common in terms of like the self-abandonment and sort of abusing ourselves and drinking and drugging and things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how
Yeah.
you came forward, where that started and how you came forward from it?
Yeah, so that started. So food was like my first alcohol codependency was big, like depending on others, pleasing others,
Yeah.
being afraid of being abandoned by others. And it was in grade eight, I'd say. Yeah, grade eight, where I discovered alcohol and partying very young. So I was 12. And I was very nervous and uncomfortable in my own skin and just afraid of not being enough. And when I started drinking, and I guess there was weed, a little bit acid, that was grade nine. I found drinking just was like such a relief. I felt confident and beautiful and connected and a part of, and my fears just went away. And it was fun and it helped me connect with people and the cool kids. And I was going into grade nine and I was very afraid of high school and hearing, oh, you're in high school, you get eaten alive. Like we were told, warned by the older people. So I was very afraid. And so alcohol quickly became something I couldn't wait to get more of, like every weekend. And I was the one getting the most drunk and or getting sick early on. Like I always say, by the age of 15, I had done things while drinking that any sane person would have stopped drinking after that. And I didn't get sober for 22 more years. And so it was, yeah, drinking was a big part. And then I had some family stuff happen. And then I had a stepmother who lived with us, and she and her son moved out. And I don't really know what caused what, but I was a good student and I started really being failing at school, not going to class, while drinking more and partying and being really pretty. Those were the things that mattered to me. Getting attention from boys. Promiscuity was a big part of my high school and onward. Um, and then drugs, cocaine, ecstasy. This kind of went on through high school, university, a lot of dropping out of school, then doing really well, then dropping out. And self-sabotage is just as much a part of this as a substance because alcohol, I was chemically, physically addicted to it, but I also used it to sabotage every change. I sabotaged relationships. I left the great, perfect guys to date the losers. You know,
Yeah.
I made sure I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a mistake. I'm not good enough. And I'm going to show the world. Every time I got like a 90, I would stop going to school. I remember an English teacher said, just show up to the exam so I can pass you because he knew the potential I had. And I didn't show up because I was like, there's no way I'm taking that grade. I don't deserve it. And so dropping out of school and being ridiculed for that. And then finally getting into university. Um, and I would go through these like highs and lows of like they say alcoholics can be very diligent people. And so I work really hard and then I get really like I went from like the lowest grades in university to the highest marks in the class through the 5 years. But I was still drinking and still partying and yeah, so that's kind of what happened. And then I was a bartender, so great place to be an alcoholic because no one's going to really notice or care as long as you show up most of the time.
I worked in a bar too, and like as a waitress, and I always had a drink right at my waitress stand. And there was a downstairs part to the bar, and we would go down and do shots all the time. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, easy place, huh? Yeah.
We would have gotten along well. Yes, yeah, yeah. And that's actually where I met my friend who he was my manager and then he was demoted to bartender because he was such a drunk. And we all drank together and we stayed friends for like 14 years, I think. Is it 14 years? Yeah. And then he moved back to Toronto, where I live from the States. He'd been living in the States and he was a dying alcoholic by the end, which I knew he had a problem, but he got sober and told me, he's like, I just got a 1 year sobriety. And I thought that was interesting for him, but not, I didn't think I had enough of a problem. So this was in my mid 30s. And, I'd been arrested for a domestic with a boyfriend, the wrong boyfriend. I'd, I was starting to get kicked out of places once in a while, and I wasn't drinking more. I was more morally and spiritually bankrupt. It wasn't like I was drinking more and more. I was wanting to be dead. I was hating myself so much. I was saying it out loud in the mirror when I was drinking.
Wow.
I tell myself, you're such a piece of shit. You know what? And you
Wow.
don't deserve a good life. Like this was if you think about abuse and trauma, like what we can actually do to ourselves,
Yes.
even if someone else started the ball rolling, whether it's bullies or whatever, we take no one could abuse me like me. I was a professional, yeah.
That's something my sister always used to say too. No one can hurt me as much as I can hurt myself. And she had bulimia and things like that. And that's when she would say those things. So you were actually looking in the mirror and saying those things to yourself. So I want to go back and talk about a few other things. But before I do that, are you now able to look in the mirror and say, I love you? I love you,
Yes.
Rebecca. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah, well, that was a big part of, well, recovery. 12-step recovery was my first, recovery. But I remember a sponsor saying to me, I want you to go, was it my sponsor? Someone, yeah. I've had so much amazing guidance from so many people. Um, but she said, I want you to go to the mirror and say I love you in the mirror. And it was 2 weeks had gone by.
Yeah.
And I think we talked twice, and I said, I haven't done it because I'm busy. And the mirror's like, I'm in the same house. The mirror's like 5 feet away. And so I realized something's up. This was years ago. And I went to the mirror and I just started bawling.
Yeah.
And I realized it wasn't that I was busy, it's that I couldn't look at myself after I was sober and I was taking good care of myself by then. But there was too much unresolved stuff that the shame of, you think about another person, like say I did horrible things to you, and if I had to face you and hope for your forgiveness, how scary that would be,
Exactly.
and rightfully so.
Right.
I didn't realize that with myself, that it's the worst. Like that inner child that I didn't even know what that was at that point was, I don't know how to face myself. How do you face someone you've treated this way and spoken to this way for 25 years plus?
Yeah.
And you don't really know very well. Like I don't know myself at that time. And so I said, I love you in the mirror. I started bawling and she answered me and looked at me and said, we'll keep talking. And that was all I needed, which was I felt sad and it's scary. It was just like doing it with another person, which was, do you expect yourself to forgive yourself just like that? And trust, like trust and forgiveness and respect are all earned and built things, and esteem. How do you build self-esteem? Through esteemable acts. So that was an esteemable act. And it was the first one where I really directed it to myself. And now today, and I also wrote letters to myself,
Oh,
both to and from. And I think if you and I talked about this maybe, but I remember writing a letter to my teenage self. I resented my teenage self deeply, which again, these deep resentments you don't see right away through the work that I did. You know how they say peeling the onion.
yes.
You get to deeper layers of understanding and recovery. Like I'm recovering something that was stuck there, or um, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. I didn't realize how much self-forgiveness there still needed, that had to happen, and how much I didn't know myself, and I hadn't really been willing to look at myself because I was too ashamed.
Right.
And that's where the inner child work started, with inner child dates, taking myself out to things that my little girl wanted to do, not my adult, not something I should do or have been meaning to do because it's something an adult would do. It's what would this little girl like to do? And I got to know myself.
And so what did
And
she choose? I'd love to hear.
so my first inner child date was I have a painting. I was doing Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. And so she calls them artist dates. And the rules of an artist date are they're once a week, I think a minimum of 2 hours, and you can't cancel them and you can't invite anybody else. And she said, watch what will happen. And she was right. My first artist date, I thought, there's my friend Mary. She's a wonderful artist, and I'd fallen in love with a painting of hers. And she was going to be selling prints at this market. And so I chose that as my artist date. I was going to go get myself one of those prints of this beautiful bicycle, painting of a bicycle. And I think the first thought was I almost canceled and I almost invited somebody to come with me. And I used to do that, like my father or a boyfriend. I've dated an artist, and I was like, oh, he should come because he knows art. And sponsors had taught me, why don't you have an experience with something on your own first and you can experience with another later. Because I always thought I want to borrow other people's knowledge and experience and avoid my own. So we went to this market and I was so nervous to walking. I was like, what if she hates me? What if she finds this boring? What if we have nothing to talk about? It actually felt like a date, only more important than a romantic date.
Mm.
So I went and got this painting that's sitting over there. And I was so happy walking home. Oh, and another thought was I shouldn't spend the money. It's silly. What if it's not the right one? And she loved it. And then over time, I discovered the cello and I started playing the cello. I'd
Oh,
never I was told when I was young that I had no musical talent. I internalized that and just steered far away from music and thought that I wasn't interested in music, but it was that I was terrified of it. And I still have my cello. I have this painting and this cello right here, actually, which is funny. And then I discovered I love dogs and I love sitting in dog parks. And I couldn't even sit still for 2 seconds for years. So how would I know that? I would, like you'd said, like having no connection with ourselves. How is that version of Rebecca abandoned, self-abandoned, using substances, complete self-hating, sabotaging? How's she going to find out that she likes sitting in dog parks and just breathing? And it's like, I just love it. So that's something. And then, was it 2 summers ago? I was doing a inner child meditation, which is just connecting with her, going to your heart, connecting inward. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Is there anything you want to say? That's kind of the inner child work, whether it's with tapping or not. And she said in this meditation, you always say we'll go to an amusement park and we never go. And I was like, I do? I just felt like a parent because I don't have kids, right? I was like, I guess I guess that's true. I have always thought of going. We have Canada's Wonderland, which it's our theme park. And I said, okay, we're going tomorrow. I looked at my calendar and I took her. I spent so much money. I got the best ticket and I went by myself and we went on roller coasters. We did our thing. We ate whatever we wanted and we didn't binge. We just wanted to try everything and do whatever we wanted. And and a week later, she said, "What about the zoo?" And
oh, I love this.
and taking and saying yes to your inner child is really exciting. Like I said, we're going to the zoo tomorrow. I felt like a little kid. No, of course I did. I was like, I'm taking and I didn't need my parents. I love my parents and I love doing stuff with them, but I didn't need them to parent me. I had the same childhood experience of what a parent's taking you somewhere and you're excited. And we went to the zoo and I had such an amazing time. The food was crap, but the animals and I had that adults in my head trying to block it, right?
Yeah.
One of my thoughts was you can't go to the zoo because a lot of people judge zoos and you can't be seen at a zoo. And I said, we're going to the zoo because you want to go.
Yeah.
Fuck what other people say. I don't care.
I love that that giddy feeling that you're talking about, right? That you feel as a kid when you're all excited to do something. I've been trying to insert more play into my life this year because I literally forgot how to play. I literally forgot how to have fun if it wasn't because my whole life revolved around drinking for so
Right.
many
Same.
years. And so that's how I had fun. I would go out drinking with friends to the bar, and that was fun. Or I would go to a concert and we would get drunk. And, like, so music
Yeah.
was always in my life and I loved music, but I had never done it without drinking, kind of a thing. And so I love the art that you're talking about and the amusement park. I'm going to do that. So because when I started to try to insert more play and fun in my life, I'm like, okay, it took me like over a week to figure out what I liked to do when I used to have fun other than, something revolving around drinking. And I thought of, oh, when I was a kid, I used to love to jump on the trampoline. So I asked my daughter to go to the Sky Zone, which is a trampoline place.
Yeah.
And we did that. And I remember doing latch hook rugs when I was little or younger, And so I went and bought a couple of latch hook rugs with like a rainbow and a smiley face and, a butterfly. And so I did some of those. And those are a couple of the things that come to mind. But I love the ideas that you gave me. I'm definitely going to go to the amusement park and go on the roller coasters because I love that.
That's
Um,
amazing. I love we're so in sync on this. And I think the two of us talking about this, I always think whether I'm sharing in a meeting or doing what we're doing here is like the people listening, how when I was somewhere where I didn't understand what the hell we're talking about right now,
Mhm.
how much this would help me to hear this because it was so out of my wheelhouse. Like, and again, and I wonder when you go to the amusement park, you're already well connected with yourself, but like spending money on myself for something that could be seen as frivolous or too luxurious, and these blocks that come in, and it's like when you do it anyway, and then you find out like that little girl in all of us, or boy, or like, or many little girls, they have such wisdom that we don't have, which is I may be the one parenting, but I don't have that wisdom of I know what we truly love and what we're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And if you just take these little things like rug hooking or going to an amusement park, there's so much trust and connection that builds. And what a rush. Like when you
Mhm.
go and it's like, I actually thought that's the thing too. A big theme in my recovery is just smashing boxes. I don't live in anyone else's boxes. And no offense to my mother if she ever hears this, but like she has her preferences and ideas about things. And she's a great teacher and practice for me because she's so often right. And I have so much respect and love for her. And I look to her for opinions a lot. And my codependent part has done way too much of that. And she
Yeah.
and I have talked about that. And she'll happily give her opinions. But I said, it's not your fault when you give me an opinion on something. The child in me would get angry at her for disagreeing with me and saying, no, you don't need to go and spend $200 at Canada's Wonderland. Now I can say, that's not something you would enjoy, but that's something I enjoy. And I'm no longer serving my mother's needs or my mother's preferences. And that's not, like you said, not to blame her. It's just I was the one serving them. And I've stopped doing that for the most part. Like everything was about what someone else would think of or approve of
My whole life.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that. Like I literally lived 40 years of my life, 35, 40 years of my life for everybody else, worrying about what everybody else would think. And again, that stems from things that, happened in my childhood. And again, not to blame my parents, but just that that's what my little brain interpreted from the things that happened was, okay, what really matters is what everybody else thinks and feels, not what I think and feel. And so I've got to please everybody else and check all the boxes for everybody else. And so that's kind of just how I lived my life for so long until just, in my more recent past in the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years when I will have been waking up to that and realizing, my God, I'm not really living my life for me. And I've been really freaking mean to myself all this time, right? I
Yeah.
had a similar experience as you when I went to go look in the mirror and tell myself I love myself. First of all, when I look in the mirror, I had to get really close because when I look in the mirror, I look at my hair and my glasses and my outfit and everything, right? So I had to get right up in the mirror, right up close so that all I could see was my eyes and really
Mm.
look in my eyes and to tell myself it was so hard to say I love you, and I was just bawling, bawling, bawling. And that was a huge sort of turning point in my life to just to start loving myself again, to really start working on loving all the pieces and parts of me, all of the promiscuous parts that you mentioned, like when you were a teen, like, oh my God, my whole, drinking and everything, sex started when I was 13. So
Yeah.
seventh grade. And I was sleeping around. I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I thought that sex was how you got love, and
Hmm.
was very confused about that for many years. And yeah, anyway, um,
Well, that's the thing too. Like sex for me, there's so much shame around sex. And that's where a lot of that Brittany Watkins work and trauma and inner child work of going back and actually recovering these stuck younger versions of myself, going back to incidents that happened in places where I abandoned her or allowed things that I didn't want, and retrieving her, actually recovering her and bringing her back to the present.
right.
And yeah, and like then I for a while when I don't know if you had this experience, because I did so much inner child work, I started to feel almost like an overprotective parent where sex was a thing. I was very protective about it. I'm like, I'm not putting her in any bad situations. And it's weird because you think don't think of a child enjoying sex because they're not supposed to. But she, even in the bedroom now, it's like there's play there and fun and allowance and absolute permission to enjoy, follow the joy and share with another healthy person, which is what I have today. And sex has become so much fun. And
Hasn't it?
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. And like being sexy and playful and realizing I'm not just submissive and giving myself to someone. I have power in it, but it's not a power play. And um, just that when you talked about that, it made me think of that, where this inner child work comes into every part of my life.
Yeah.
And it's anything can be fun. Like it's and joyful and not being afraid to like things, whether it's going to a dog park or something in bed. It's like it's okay. You don't have to feel ashamed for I'd feel ashamed for all sorts of things or spending money on something I love. And that's still a struggle sometimes.
Sometimes for me too, yeah. Just going back to the sex thing for a minute. Like for me, I remember spending so much time whenever I was having sex with someone worrying about what they were thinking about me
Oh
that
yeah.
I couldn't even enjoy myself, you know? I mean, there's a lot more to that, but that was a big part of it for me. Like I was so worried what they were thinking about my body and how I looked and how I was acting and was I kissing good enough and was I doing things good, that I never had good experiences. So I love that you went back into some of those details and recovered yourself. I think I'm going to do some work on that myself. But yeah, that wow, that brings up quite a bit of stuff for me actually now that I sit with it for just a second. A part of that for me was I was always with the wrong partner, and I'm a lesbian, and but that's not the path that I followed. I didn't come out until I was like 40 or 41 or something like that. I grew up in a very strict Catholic home, and so that just wasn't a thing. I didn't even know lesbians were a thing. I knew there were gay guys, but my little brain, at the time, I was kind of emotionally underdeveloped, and I didn't even sort of think, well, that's a girl thing. I always just thought that it was, um, you know, uh, perverted and something I had to hide and had to be shameful of and all that. But when I came out, it wasn't because, so I had gotten married and had kids and all these things. I got a divorce, not because I was a lesbian, but because I just wasn't happy. And then the first person I fell in love with happened to be a woman. And then I got in bed with a woman and I'm like, oh, this is what sex is
Wow.
like,
That's amazing.
and um, so yeah, there's a lot in that, but yeah, I totally understand how you feel now about how there's fun in sex and it's so great in so many ways. And for us as women, like there's so much power in that life force energy that we have, in that creative energy that we have in our sexual experiences.
Totally. I so relate to that. When I first started, I didn't have sex for over 3 years into recovery. I got very nervous about
Sounds like my
dating.
marriage.
Yeah.
Longer than that. But
Yeah, I was married to just being, I guess that relationship anorexia, they call it,
Mhm.
where I just got so used to not dating. I hadn't dated in like over 4 years, and I didn't want to start. And when I first started having sex in recovery, it was the same. I was very thin and because I was in that program, and it was all, even the guy that I was with, who I'm still friends with, I would tell him like all I care about is, at the time I got addicted to lingerie because I was thinking, how can I be beautiful? How can I be novel? What can I do differently? And how do I look? I would check every mirror to make sure I looked okay in the bedroom. And he'd say, he liked my body a lot, but he said, that's not what I like about you. And I couldn't believe it. It took years to believe that he liked me. And I thought, yeah, but if I didn't have this body, he wouldn't like me. He may like other things, but this body is number one. And it's getting older, and I can't have him see it a certain way. And I think now there's still a bit of that. But I have fun with my partner, and my whole life I didn't want anyone touching my stomach because it
Yeah.
was round. I was like, I would lie a certain way, and now my partner will hold that belly and he loves it. And it's helping me. Sometimes I have to borrow other people's love of me when I'm not able to do it myself. So
Mm.
these men in my life have taught the ones in the last 9 years have taught me about that, about this acceptance of self, and that it's not always my business what people find attractive about me. I'm often wrong when I think,
Right. Yeah. Let them have their experience kind of a thing, right? Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the same, it's the same kind of concept with people pleasing, right? Like, or carrying more than we need to, always worrying about what other people are thinking and feeling and trying to accommodate all of that. We're not really allowing them to have their experience. That's so beautiful.
That's so true. Yeah. And like a couple things I heard that makes me think of like one thing my old sponsor used to say was, you might as well be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yeah,
I
right.
love that because we just spend all our time trying to be anyone but ourselves,
Yes.
and also that people are most lovable when they get to be themselves. And that goes both ways. Like when I was dating someone, I used to try and control his behavior, and I used to try and I wanted to fix him or help him, or and I said to him like, you I just want you to be yourself. And that's all that's absolutely enough. That's exactly what you should be, regardless of what I think or my preferences. So I got to experience him as himself. And I started to see him as more lovable, even though we didn't stay together. I was like, that's and that goes both ways for the people we're with and then for ourselves with others. And my whole dating in the first, well, it's always been all of my dating in recovery has been a way of getting to know myself better. And that's my reason for dating. I'd show up on a date and say, how can I be myself today? How can I listen and learn, see what I like, what I don't like, learn about myself and be a good date. Like what kind of date am I being today? And part of being honest is telling people the truth. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I was scared to tell people that. It's like
I love
avoiding
that.
dating. Mm,
Dating is to get to know yourself better. Wow,
yeah.
that is, I got to talk to my daughter about that. She's 18.
Oh, well, it sure takes the pressure off. Like, I'd go show up being like, how am I going to appear? What if he doesn't like me? What if I don't like him?
Yeah.
What if, what if, and what if I don't know enough about what he knows about? And I remember when I started dating my ex-boyfriend, and he's an amazing artist. And after our first date, I was like, I got to learn art history. I have to learn everything about art history because he knows so much. And then I realized that's not who I am. And why would a guy who knows art history so well want to hear me talk about it? Like I can be interested in it, but I don't need to know it and become this art history major in 2 weeks. And I just love that, being myself and showing up and just spending an hour with another human being. That's almost always interesting, even if it's not a match. And yeah, dating was a great practice for getting to know myself, and just like everything is.
Right. Because it just makes me think, it just kind of came to me. It makes me think of, because everything is really a reflection of us, right? We live, it's our entire life. So we're vibrational beings, we're energetic beings. What the vibe that and the energy that we're putting out is reflected back to us. And so
Right,
that's really how we're creating our lives, whether we are doing it consciously or unconsciously. Everything is like a mirror being reflected back to us. And I never
right.
thought of it in that way, with dating, but it very much is.
It's funny. I've been thinking because I connect with you so well, and we have so many things in common. And I've been I'm planning to do a series of inner child work, like courses.
Yeah.
And I think like they could be, whether it's one course or like many courses, but one just being about inner child work and dating. Is its own course because dating it can be very insufferable for a lot of people. And there's so many ways to bring that in to and make it actually a spiritual experience. And it's not, and it becomes not about the outcome. It's just I'm gonna come out of this knowing myself better. It doesn't
Yes.
matter what happens.
Because
Yeah.
everything is supposed to be about the process instead of the outcome anyway, right? Because you get to the outcome and then it's like, oh, well, what's the next thing then? If you didn't
Yeah.
enjoy the process, the outcome is like a point in time, a second or whatever, rather
Yeah.
than the whole entire process that got you there. Wow, I really love that.
Yeah. And it's fun because they're almost like little micro documentaries. Like you sit down with this person, you only get to meet them for the first time once, and you get to have that experience, and then you get to see how you are. And I'll have full conversations with my inner child when I'm on a date, and like, how are we doing? How are we feeling?
Love it.
Are you enjoy and also checking out, are you enjoying this? Not is he enjoying this? Are you enjoying this? And kind of, it's all right. Like he's sort of interesting. I don't know. But I'm loving the walk. I'm loving the weather. And I've had so many cool experiences with rather than people saying like, I got to be married by this date and I got to be living with someone by this date, and going in with that pressure and that,
Mm.
or this idea that there's everyone's shitty anyway, which I've been there too, but and already looking at outcomes before anything's even happened.
Well, and the expectation, right? Because that's so pressure filled, like you said, and exhausting. Like that's how I lived my whole life, was looking around going, oh, everybody has expectations of me that I have to meet for them versus
Yeah.
for me. So I love that your focus is on yourself, which, we are taught, especially as women, that, when you focus on yourself and put yourself first, that's selfish, but really it's not. Like everybody's, or hopefully people are starting to wake up to that,
Yeah.
because that's where our focus should be, is on ourselves, because it's our life, in this human body for this life right now. And we're supposed to have good lives. We're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to enjoy it. It isn't supposed to be this sufferable experience. I mean, I know that,
Yeah.
some of us has to go through that. Our souls have to go through that in order to get to the places where maybe you and I are now, uh,
Right.
to learn that in this lifetime. But we're really meant to come here to be filled with joy and fun and play and love our lives.
Exactly. And like you said, like we start, if like there's a saying like, let it begin with me. So when it's not that I don't consider others, it's that if I'm being my best self, and I mean best meaning authentic, true to myself, the byproduct of that is the most helpful to others. If I start with them and say, I'll just focus on helping others, being there for others, doing for others, then I'm not giving, I mean, maybe I'm offering 20% of myself to them and the rest is inauthentic or not or absent. And I've just found that like when I actually focus on myself, other people get to experiencing me, whatever gifts I have to offer. There's so much more. And I'm seeing that. I'm like, oh my God, it's not hard. And I don't have to focus constantly wondering what other people are thinking. I don't do that anymore.
Right. It's not hard. You're exactly right. And I couldn't have said it better. Basically, and this isn't word for word, but the byproduct of our authenticity is what's most helpful for others.
Yeah.
It is. I couldn't have said it better. And I have the podcast about authenticity. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, we're nearing our time. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Thank
Um,
you.
I have learned, I think what I love most about it is what I've learned from you. Not only about the play and some of the other things, but that's definitely the first one I'm going to be putting into action for myself, is that play. And it's winter where I'm at. So I really can't go to the amusement park right this hot minute, but it'll be on my list for the spring.
Well, that's the thing too, like building a snowman. My adult doesn't think about things like that. But my child, if I were to go out, I mean, it's raining here, but if I were to go out and build a snowman, I would love it. I would love the things I loved as a child. So why am I not doing them? And the answer is we're not supposed to, or we don't have time. And so winter's a wonderful time to explore something fun. Mhm.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. It hasn't snowed yet, but it will be soon. So a
Yeah.
snowman will also be, and angels. Oh, I remember the snow angels. I used to love
Yes.
doing those.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
And
Yeah.
maybe even a fort, like a little
Oh
igloo.
my gosh. That could be
Yeah.
amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca, again, this has been so awesome. I have loved this conversation so much. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Can't wait to have you on mine.
Excellent. How can people find you?
So I have an Instagram, Hell Happiness Repeat, and I also have a Facebook group with the same name. So right now, that's how people can find me. I'm not going to launch till February, but yeah, that's they can find me there, ask questions, watch for updates, all of that good stuff.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I love you. Thank you.
you
And
too.
we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Don't you just love her? I just love her, and I loved everywhere our conversation went. She has such perspective that I needed to hear in just the way that she said it and shared it. I feel like we were just so in sync, and I really believe it's magical when that happens with someone. So thank you, Rebecca. I guess one of the things I loved most about our conversation was the reminder for me about connecting with my inner child and her wisdom, because she knows so fucking much that I have forgotten about, like how to play and have fun, and I really want and need that so much in my life. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, just a small fraction as much as I did. And be sure to check out her podcast, Hell, Happiness, Repeat, launching on April 26th, and give her some love. Okay, here are the takeaways from our conversation. 1, EFT tapping connects you with stuck emotions and subconscious blockers and releases them. And I have experienced that too, because I do EFT tapping. Number 2, your inner child has their own wisdom around how to play and take chances and enjoy things. They know what we truly love and what we're meant to be doing. Listen to them. It builds trust and connection with yourself. Number 3, the more you depend on yourself in a healthy way, the less you will feel the need to depend on others for what you are responsible for, which is to take care of yourself and love yourself. This will help you be less interested in what other people think or what their preferences or opinions are of what you need to do to be satisfactory. Let it be on your own terms. Number 4, once you have that true connection with self again, letting your higher self guide you, trusting your intuition, your gut feel, moving from your head to your heart, all of the things in life become easier. When you don't have it, everything is a struggle and a guess and a trial. 5, affirm to yourself, acceptance is the key to all of my problems today. Until I can accept every person, place, thing, and circumstance exactly as it's meant to be today, I'll find no peace or serenity. 6, accepting and loving yourself just as you are helps you heal. You get to decide how you feel about your body and about everything about you, no one else. Number 7, when we're so horrible to ourselves and we feel shame about it, facing ourselves and hoping for forgiveness is scary. Like, how do you face someone that you've treated this way and spoken to this way, especially when you don't know them very well, when you don't know yourself very well? Start by looking in the mirror and telling yourself you love yourself, and keep doing it. Keep talking. Trust and forgiveness and respect are all earned and built things, so we can't expect that they'll come without time and consistency. 8, take your inner child out for dates and get to know yourself again. Don't cancel the dates and don't invite anybody else along. You will actually feel like a date, only more important. I love this one and I'm doing it for sure. Number 9, there is so much shame around sex, especially for women. We need to change this. Sex should be fun and enjoyable and joyful. There's power in it, in the life force energy, in our sexuality and our sensuality, without it being a power play. 10, borrow other people's love of you when you're unable to love yourself. Man, I love that one too. 11, you might as well be yourself. Everyone is taken. We've all heard that one before, right? You're most lovable when you get to be yourself. So make sure you surround yourself with people who let you be you. And this goes both ways. Let others be themselves too. 12, remember the saying, let it begin with me. If we are being our most authentic and true selves, the byproduct of that is the most helpful thing to others. Awesome stuff. Okay, before we go, I want to invite you to check out my coaching packages, because I am on fire right now and I am so motivated and inspired to help you remember who you are, to reconnect with yourself, to move from your head to your heart and operate from that place, to help you believe in yourself again, and help you find joy and ease and happiness again. So let's do it. Let's get over the struggle. You can find me at reikiflowmn.com. Check out my About Me page to learn more about me, book a free discovery call to find out if we're a good match for working together, and look at my packages to find out which one feels best for you. All right. Thank you for spending your time here with me today. I hope that this podcast helps you and sheds new light on things and sparks a light within you, a spark within you. And I hope it helps you remember to truly play again, among other things. Remember to follow along on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, because I have so many more amazing episodes coming up. And please download, follow, or subscribe. That way you'll be notified when new episodes are available. And it also helps other people find the podcast, so it can help others as well. I'm posting every week for sure on Thursdays and more in between if I am compelled to share something extra. And if you're liking the podcast and benefiting from it, please leave me a review, which you can do in Apple or rate in Spotify. That also helps other people find the podcast, so that would be awesome. And if you know of anyone who would like this episode or benefit from it, please share it with them. Send them a link, text them, post it on your socials, whatever's easiest, but please share it. And you're always welcome to email me at paula@reikiflowmn.com with questions or things you want to hear about or want more of. So I love you so much. Thanks again for being here.